Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another podcast session, and I'm very, very pleased to have somebody who I've known for a long time, and we've got a certain love and a passion for the same game, so we'll maybe bring that in a little bit later on. But the person I'm talking about is Lionel van der Walt, and he's the president and CEO of America's PayCargo. So Lionel, lovely to have you on board, sir.
Hey, Chris, great to be with you again, and I look forward to talking.
Yes, yeah. It's been a while. And so you're now talking to us from the Carolinas, correct?
No, in actual fact, today I'm in the office in Miami.
Oh, what a tough call, eh? Hey, what a tough call. Stuck in Miami.
Well, yeah, you know, when there's winter weather anywhere, you come to Miami and you're good.
Yeah. And whereabouts in Miami are you?
We're in Coral Gables. That's where the head office is based.
Oh, very nice. Very nice indeed, sir. Very envious sitting on this side. Very envious. Right. So, Lionel, now what we normally do is we ask our guests just to give a little bit of background. How did you come to be where you are? And, you know, what have you experienced from joining the company, and especially now over the last year with this damn pandemic?
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely terrible, you know, for a lot of people around the globe. Where I came from, I started my career off, you know, out of school, getting involved in aviation within the South African Air Force. From there, I'm not going to go into all the boring details, but from there, moved into air traffic control with ATNS. Yep. From there, with South African Airways, into operations within the airline. And then from there, I had the privilege of joining IATA as the regional head for Southern Africa, moved with IATA to Europe, lived in a terrible place again, Chris. I lived in Madrid, Spain.
Yeah, I know it well. I was there for 6 years. Beautiful place.
Yeah, no, absolutely stunning. So I lived in a little town called Tres Cantos, just outside of Madrid, and the office was just across, where it is today still for IATA, across the Bernabeu Stadium. And then from there, eventually relocated to Miami with IATA. Once again, ended up with a terrible job where I was heading up the Caribbean for IATA. So I had to fly in and out of all the Caribbean islands. Although I will tell you, I was the only guy in a suit on the island, I'm pretty much sure. And then from there, I ended up as the president at Cargo Network Services, IATA's cargo arm within the United States. Yeah. And you know, after being with IATA for many years and including CNS, I decided I wanted to take on a challenge that would stretch me a bit. I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. Yep. So I went into an industry that's totally outside of what we do today. So became the chief executive officer of the International Institute for Building Enclosure Consultants. Right. Hence my move to Raleigh. And so basically there I was managing an association representing architects and engineers. And while there, PayCargo asked me to join their board, which I did, and very soon got drawn back into the cargo world and ended up taking a more active role as the CEO for the North Americas, or for the Americas, with PayCargo. But fortunately, the good news is I'm still involved with IBEC, because I then transitioned onto their the board of their foundation. So I'm still got that tie in there. But yeah, that's where the road that I took to get where I am today. Very interesting, because I ended up in a startup, which is something I've never done before. So it's a whole new world.
Yeah, but a very exciting one, especially now. I think the one thing that this damn crisis has done is anything to do with digitalisation or any technical advancements. It's sped it up almost 10 years in 1 year.
Absolutely. And you know, it's not only in our industry where you see that, you see it in consumer behavior, right? Everybody being at home, everybody purchasing everything online, and that's not going to change. And we see that now in the demand for goods and the movement of goods. You know, looking at Asia into the US, it's crazy when you look at the rates on the ocean side and on the air side. The air side came down quite a bit in this last week. But I mean, it's over, I think it's $4.50 still per kilo, which when they say it's come down considerably, because in January it was over the $8 a kilo. Yeah. But now what I'm reading is it's going to go up again. But so the point is just that, you know, the demand side is not going to change. And it's because of this whole digitalization and move to doing everything online, right?
Yeah, plus obviously the reduction in capacity, which is substantial. So I mean that's
Absolutely.
that's going to take a while to come back. So for once, cargo has got a pretty good horizon, no matter where you are looking from it.
Absolutely, and that's I always say when I speak to people, is to me that's the silver lining around this cloud of doom that's called COVID-19. Is number one, that it's taken our industry forward in leaps and bounds in terms of digitalization, but also that it's shone the spotlight on our industry about the importance of what we do, moving valuable cargo around, the vaccines, PPE when that was required, and it's still there, obviously. But even now, when people are struggling to find flowers for Valentine's Day, which is just behind us, right? People are starting to go, oh, okay, it's because of air cargo and it's because of what's happening within the industry. So I think that's the silver lining, that we've really got the attention of, governments. We've got the attention of members of boards who are now paying more attention and investing more in what we do. So I'm hoping that will continue. Yeah,
no, it's great. And I think that also bodes well for, new minds and people that are interested now in the supply chain and logistics that they were never before, because it's at everybody's, well, it's in front of everybody now. They know how important it is and how good it is. But I think it's also, what it's also doing is it's showing even more so now the need for people to focus on sustainability of the business and also the types of companies that you work for. Because if you're working for an organization that hasn't got a good focus or a good eye on sustainability and they're continually in a race to the bottom, it's not something now that you're going to bet your future on. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of movement and voices made by people's feet. And that footfall will be where they go and work for companies who care about them. So they care about the companies because they have to look after their own personal ecosystem. And they'll want to work for companies that care about the right things and manage correctly. So digitalization, all those efficiencies, everybody's going to be a lot more focused and a lot more acceptance. The acceptance levels will be much, much higher now. So
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And I look, I've got a daughter that's 24 years old working for a company outside of our industry. But when I look at her way of thinking, it's very different to the way I was thinking when I was growing up. She wouldn't hesitate in leaving her company if it wasn't a company that she felt was ethical, if it wasn't a company that allowed her to enjoy her work and to have freedoms that she'd expect. Working from home, doing certain things, that's more new, digitalized, more new, modern age kind of approaches. So we definitely need to keep an eye out for that. That's the next generation way of doing things that's very different to the way we were doing it. And I also think, the old Boy Scout adage of being prepared, it's those companies that had the foresight to do expensive projects, to consolidate systems, to implement new systems prior to COVID. I mean, they were ahead of the game and they had the agility to be able to react quickly and to pivot and to get leading advantages out of the crisis, where those companies, and there's a lot of them around, who thought they would just stick to the old ways, and there's material and monetary, there were material and monetary benefits for doing that. That's why we stuck in the paper age in our industry a lot of the time still, right? But now that has changed. So you're seeing a lot of people having to pivot very quickly, and they're struggling if they hadn't been prepared.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And the words you use in there, agility, resilience, pivot, sustainability, all those words now are things that have to be the bread and butter and everybody's oxygen, from boardroom all the way down to the bottom, because people have seen now through furlough and being laid off and practical sizing, if you don't choose an industry or a company well, it could have a big impact on you, because this isn't going to be the first and only major shock that comes to the human race. It's going to come again, not necessarily in a virus pandemic, but there'll be other things that are going to start to come. So people need to be a little bit wiser and more sensible now. So and care more about everybody. That's the one good thing, I think, is all these positive stories that you see. It's uplifting, and people are fed up of negative media, negativity and conflict and everything being so complex. It's a terrible thing.
Agreed. And I think, one of the lessons for me personally is, when you enjoy what you're doing and you're as passionate as I am about my role, you tend to get lost in it sometimes, right? And then the family suffers slightly. And as I've said, I travel a lot, so I'm away from home a lot. It's been quite an eye-opening lesson to really refocus a bit more on the family. And not taking them for granted, because you never know what can happen tomorrow.
Yep.
And at the same time, I think it's a lesson that we need to learn from the industry also about our employees. We shouldn't be taking people for granted, and we should really be looking after our employees. And even those, a lot of people have lost their jobs recently within the industry. We need to be finding ways to, how do we reach out to these people, keep them involved? One of the things I always think is that we can mentor these people, right? Even if they're not in the industry anymore.
Yep.
Don't lose contact with people. Stay in touch with them. Use that LinkedIn network that we've got. See how we can assist them when they're looking for opportunities. A word of encouragement just to keep them, pepped up. Because things will change. And it's also going to take a mindset change on their side. But I think we got a responsibility there, and I don't see a lot of people taking that too seriously yet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations, and especially representative and regulatory organizations, they should also now be focusing on providing certain training free of charge to anybody who's been displaced, who would like to get back into the industry and whose company would like to take them back if the conditions improved. And we should do that for some time, so that people don't feel alienated or as if they're the victims, and also to train in a different way, because there's a lot of people now who are going to be taking on a lot more responsibility and haven't been given any support, coaching or mentoring or benefits of other people's failures. And they're just being assumed that because they managed to get through the pandemic, that they're qualified supervisors, managers, lead agents, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And I also think, as you said, there's organizations out there that can make a huge difference here. I just think of my past organization, IATA. You look at TIACA, you look at FIATA, all of these associations. Many of them have got training programs that can help to upskill people. But it comes at a cost, right? So is there a way, because under the pandemic, that we can get some assistance, financial assistance from governments to help subsidize some of this training so that we can keep people upskilled and give them new opportunities? If you go back to the whole idea of the industry's changing, and we've got this acceleration of digitalisation within the industry, roles are changing. There's new opportunities, and it's very exciting, because I think for the younger generation, if they just had to look at our industry and all the paper movements and this, who would get excited about that, right? But now all of a sudden we're talking about Internet of Things, we're talking about online payment systems, we're talking about using robots and using all new technologies, digital printers, whatever the case is within our industry to facilitate the ease of movement of goods. I think that is going to create a whole new generation of excited young people to come and join us. Yeah,
and you're right there. And also the difference now, whereas I know I always used to have people saying to me, you work so hard, you're a workaholic, or why'd you put so much into it? And they'd say that, you've got to get your work-life balance. Whereas now I think people are focusing more on life-work balance. And there's a totally different mind shift there. And it's incredible. But one of the things that you said there about exciting people, imagine coming into our industry, okay, and all the things that somebody can do in their private life. And then they come in and they still, and this is even now for 1, 2 of your previous lives, and they still see all this damn paperwork everywhere, especially in cargo. And I spoke with Nick Careen and loads of people, and somebody that I spent a lot of time with, Dave Ambridge, in the past. I mean, for 10, 20 years, lots of people have been saying, when in God's name are we going to get rid of the airway bill and all the house airway bill and all the paperwork? And if anything has given a bit of a catalyst for that change now, surely it should be sanitization and trying to, speed up where we should be with it. But there are certain parties who've got vested interests in keeping that paperwork. So when are we going to be big enough and brave enough to say enough's enough? Let's get rid of it. When?
So I think if you take the example of the shift from paper tickets to electronic tickets on the passenger side,
Yeah.
Right. So that's a prime example of how the industry changed a set of behaviors. That project, I mean, it took over 10 years from when people started talking about it until it was finalized. But and there was a lot of people along that road, and I was heavily involved in that, who said it would never work. Even from the airline side, people said this will never work.
Yeah.
It's going to be costly. People always come up with excuses. And look where we are today. You take it so for granted that you can do everything on your phone. You don't have to have any paper, etc. The one key difference was that IATA in that scenario controlled the paper stock of tickets. So they could basically say, okay, we've reached a point now where we're 97% adoption. We're cutting off the stock. On the cargo side, we do not have anything like that. So there's no one organization or association that can do that. However, my humble opinion is that the key differentiator that can make that difference is the governments around the globe.
Correct.
If we get alignment between the governments and they start mandating certain things, because a lot of the time, most of the paperwork that's required is because of outdated regulatory requirements.
Yep, and that's what's needed, because if we can get rid of that, just like especially now with using some benefit from a crisis or a pandemic, that's a huge winner,
But there's big money involved, right? There's people who have businesses that are built around this. I look at it from the payment side, So we're bringing in all this great new technology. We're bringing all these benefits to the industry, and it's well adopted and supported. But there are still companies out there that have been built up, like what they call check runners. And it's basically these guys who built up businesses where they're running and moving these checks and whatever between different stakeholders. So it's for them, obviously, if we had to have this change, it's going to have a huge negative impact. So it's being able to convince them to say, okay, so where's the opportunity for you in this new digital world? Can you do something different? Can you work together to help modernize the industry where you're also benefiting? But you have to understand, you're going to change, you're going to evolve. You cannot do this paper thing, because guaranteed it's going away. It's not going to be around. Maybe it's going to take another year, 18 months, whatever the case is, but it's going away.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You're not going to be able to hold back the tide, and it's working together earlier and accepting it, and then trying to find something that makes sense rather than resist it. Now, on that note, nice little segue there into what you're doing. So, talking about people and having ease of convenience and access, etc. Everybody now expects that you can pay, and you can pay quickly, and you can pay with different means. And who knows, not too far away, we'll be doing everything with our eyes and biometrics and all sorts. So there'll be no money anywhere. But now, if you just explain what was the opportunity of your business model and why it was able to make the impact that it has on that paper process that still exists to a degree, and especially, no disrespect now, but especially in the part of the world that you live and work in.
Absolutely. So the North American market blew my mind when I moved here from Europe in 2011. And I'll just start off with this little tidbit. So I move here, going to rent a home. First thing I want to do is I contact the owner. We close the deal for the rental, and I say to him, can you please give me your bank details, because I'd like to transfer the money across, obviously, every month. And he said to me, absolutely no, I do not trust that. I would prefer that you email me a check, or not email me, mail me a check. And I was, really? You think me mailing you a check is safer than having a direct payment from me into your bank account? And he was absolutely yes. And that was sort of the mentality that I ran into here in the United States. So yes, in the United States, in the North American market, we got a lot of checks still. It is busy changing. So there's a big movement, especially in our industry. But it's still, if you were to look at PayCargo, and we're the dominant player in the marketplace here, if you were to ask me what percentage of the market have we secured, it's less than 10%. And is that because of competition? No, it's because of inefficiency within the marketplace. So to answer your question about the value that PayCargo brings, and it's very simple. If you had to look, and I'll give you the example of a forwarder bringing a shipment into the United States.
Yep.
That shipment arrives at the airport, and the forwarder gets a message saying that the shipment has arrived. They then basically have to go internally and reconcile the amount that they're being charged, make sure it's correct. Then they have to go to somebody internally and request them to process a check. The check gets written out, goes to somebody else for an approval, a signature. Then you get on somebody's desk a pile of paperwork and checks. They then basically want to expedite the release of that cargo. So they get somebody like a FedEx or a UPS to rush all of those across to the airline. The airline needs to basically deposit the checks, reconcile that on their side, and then they'll let their people know the cargo can be released, right? So and then they will tell the forwarder, okay, you can come pick it up. So a very outdated, antiquated process. Now there were cases where there were credit being given, but that's another issue I'll delve into later because it's got some really big negatives. What PayCargo has done basically is we've got an online system where the forwarder now, they get the details of the shipment coming in, it's arrived. They go in our system, they put in the details, airwebble, all the details. They either got one approval in our system, same person entering the details and approving, or a two-step where somebody's entering the details and another person is approving. As soon as they approve the payment, so the money hasn't moved yet, they just approved it, a message goes directly to the carrier. And because the carriers trust PayCargo and they know they're going to receive their money the next morning in their bank account, they release the cargo immediately. So it speeds up that flow of movement of goods. It's very cost efficient. Our model is simple. We charge a fee per transaction to the payers. Vendors like carriers, ground handlers, etc., don't pay anything. But the fee that we charge right now is $7.50 is our standard base fee per transaction. Why would a forwarder pay that? Well, if you look at that whole check process and you look at all the man hours and you look at everything, there was a study done and it's outdated now, a couple of years back, about 3-4 years back. And that cost was anything, if you were very efficient, run about the $17, $18 per transaction mark. But most probably it was going to be around the $30 mark.
Yeah.
So, and now, Chris, we're not even talking about the benefit of having access to data. So we facilitate payments, but one of our biggest values is the data and the access to data.
Yep.
Because in the traditional model, you had to basically wait for your station to finish the month. Then they had to do their financial documents, pass on the reports, etc. Right now, head office can immediately access the information once that payment's been made.
Yep, data is such a valuable thing now. So it's the new gold, the new oil. I mean, it's incredible. And the more that people are confident to share it and be happy to share it because of the common benefits, then the greater it's going to be. Also, ironically now, which is lovely to hear, you're getting governments now involved with this crisis because they didn't know what they didn't know. They were making promises around dates. Now everybody's talking about data-driven decision-making. So they're setting their data 4 weeks after that, subject to what we get as a trend or whatever, we then make another move. So people are also now starting to do things in a certain way. And that whole shift now globally, including, you look at it the way it was starting off, where people were competing with whether or not they had a cleanliness program or a hygiene program or a COVID confidence booster program, whatever it was, and then it came down to the vaccines. Those are things that you shouldn't be competing on. Those are prerequisites that everybody should expect, and it should be done better. Lots of governments have made fools of themselves by criticizing one vaccine against another. At the end of the day, the vaccines are making the difference, and people should be careful what they say, I think. So this care element, please God, touch wood, will be something that's a good legacy from the crisis.
Yeah, and touching on the data side, Chris, which is really important, Jay, is PayCargo, we consider ourselves to be a neutral payment platform.
Yeah.
And that's part of our success, right? Is because you can have all the data in the world, but if you're an island and that data is not flowing seamlessly across various organizations and stakeholders, it means absolutely nothing. So we integrate, one of our key successes is being that neutral partner. We integrate with all the service providers that you manage the operational systems in the background. So you're talking about Champ, Unisys, IBS, Acelia, etc., right? To help facilitate the movement of data and information. Because if we didn't do that, so let's take that same example I gave you previously. So the airline that has the shipment coming in, the forwarder makes the payment in the PayCargo system.
Yep.
If we send the message to the airline and we're not integrated with their system, they have to go into either in our system or we have to send them an email alert, right? So it's multiple steps. If we integrate it and you've got this movement, seamless movement of data with the operational system, they just go in the operational system that they're currently working in, they get the alert that the payment has been made. As simple as that. Then you take it a step further. When that forwarder goes in our system initially to input the transaction, if we integrated with their system, with the airline system, the forwarder puts the airway bill number in, we ping their system and we pull the fees out, right? What need to be paid. So now you're taking the human error out of the whole process. So there's so much more. That's why I said data is the key here, because there's so many advantages to the movement of this data. Plus, if you start building in workflows where you can allow, for example, a head office to decide which person at which station can enter data, which person can actually approve, what amounts can they approve, what amounts can they approve to which vendor.
Yep.
Is there a different level of approval they have during a weekend versus a week? Yep. All these sort of benefits can be managed via data through these systems. So it's pretty huge, and it really changes the way we think in the industry. But the key is it's facilitating the quick release of these goods and the movement of goods, meaning that for an airline or a ground handler, the goods are in and out, so they can keep things moving, ticking over. And then obviously for the forwarders, they get the shipments to their clients as soon as possible, which is their commitment from a customer service side.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And something that you just made me think of there. So whether or not there's a delegation of authority or whether there's certain internal governance rules as to who can and can't authorize it, because of that data flow, it's immediate. I'm assuming now there's a very, very, very tight security level on that particular transaction, because if there was anything untoward or whatever, it would be stopped or it would have to go through some sort of filter. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And nobody is going to do any business with PayCargo if their money wasn't secure. That would be the number one criteria, right, for anybody when you're touching their money. So just to give you one example of how we manage that, we do not touch the funds at all.
Yeah.
That surprises a lot of people. So when a payer makes a payment via PayCargo, that money ends up in an FBO account, for benefit of account, which is like an escrow account. So we've got no access to that. It's with our bank. And then obviously the money flows from that account to the vendor. The only money that we get access to is our transaction fees, which get pulled out from that into our operating accounts. So it's really key, because why is this important? If something had to happen to a payer or a vendor or PayCargo, God forbid, touch wood, right? That money is secure.
Yeah.
So that's just one example. Then we go through huge SOC audits, which basically we have our systems audited continuously, and we've got extremely high ratings around that. It's really having a robust system, but also not taking anything for granted and being agile and being willing to adjust at the drop of a pin to what the needs are of the marketplace, which is continuously shifting.
Yeah, and I take it when you're talking about soccer, you're talking about serious organised crime.
Well, it's basically our audits on our IT side, making sure that we've got all of the the safeguards in place, that the systems are secure. We have got a lot of, and I don't want to go into too many details because you never know who's listening and might take this on as a challenge.
Yeah, you don't want that.
But we've got a lot of systems in place and a lot of checks, making sure that money laundering is not taking place, and we're meeting all of the regulatory requirements that need to be followed within the various countries that we operate.
Yeah, no, and the credibility there is unquestioned. But also, like you said earlier, with the stakeholders that you're involved with, from IATA, CNS, Champ, Unisys, IBS, etc. I mean, that's a great forward line if it was a rugby team, huh?
Well, once again, it goes about that open collaborative approach that we've got, and being the neutral payment piece.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is, and there has been some media about it, and FIATA has communicated it already in some posts. I think Turgut had something out a couple of weeks back. Is we're very, very honored and privileged that we've been selected by FIATA, and we're busy working with them to develop a payment system for their members. I'm not going to go into details. It's not for me to share that. That's FIATA, and that will be done at their annual meeting that's coming soon. But it's really, identifying these opportunities where there's gaps in the marketplace across the board. At the end of the day, from our perspective, if we're not adding value both to the vendors and the payers, exactly. So you're looking after the ground handlers, the airlines, the forwarders, the beneficial cargo owners, all of these stakeholders, the system will come apart. So it's really about creating that community effect that benefits all and helps the industry to transform. And that's why we also support in a big way IATA's One Record initiative. Yes,
100%. And the more of that takes place, then, like you said, it puts more pressures on governments and authorities to streamline and become more modern as well, which is one of the key issues.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we're extremely privileged that Mike White, who
yes.
you also know, is a good friend of ours. Mike obviously left CNS recently, and he's now taken a position on our board. And Mike has spent many years advocating and working with governments around the world, and specifically a lot here in the United States, to look at our industry differently. So he's going to hopefully help us to also change some perceptions at government level. Yeah,
and he's a lovely fella. So like I said to you at the beginning, we're also due to do a podcast with Mike, and I've met him so many times, but he always goes out of his way to be very helpful and very supportive. He's a good man.
Yeah. One other thing I can mention, Chris, that's also interesting is, we talk about checks, vouchers, and all these paper processes. Another thing that was very prevalent here in the United States was airlines providing credit to forwarders, which is a normal practice around the globe. But what's interesting here is that they were doing it for import service fees. So import service fees, we're talking about $100, $120 at small amounts, which really don't make a lot of sense. And it sounds, once again, it's an easy way of doing business. So for example, if that cargo is coming in, and you want to just release it without even making sure that the amount is correct or it's the right cargo, it's easy just to put it on the credit, right? We'll just put it on the credit, we'll sort it out later. But what I think a lot of stakeholders are realizing, both from the airline and the forwarder side, it's resulted in a lot of post-transaction disputes.
Yes.
Now the issue here is, so an airline, 60, 90 days down the line comes to a forwarder and says, oh, we realized, you weren't exactly charged what you should have been charged. We now need you to pay X amount. The forwarder cannot go to the shipper and say, okay, it's 90 days later, I need you to pay me extra. So they invariably sit with the cost of having teams of people trying to do these reconciliations, number one, and number two, with the lost funds.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, like you said, it's not always then just about the money. It's the time and effort that goes into it. And it's just, in this day and age, it shouldn't be happening.
Now, a lot of people argue to me and say, but that's the best way to do it. And once again, I think this is one of those things where the wave is coming, it's going to change. Yeah. It's something that's not sustainable. And if we want to modernize the supply chain to get goods moving as quickly as possible, there are huge benefits to be had. But, these small pockets of issues that we have, where we're doing things because we've done it like that always, that needs to change.
It does indeed. And whenever you're close to a wave, you're always going to get wet as it comes towards you, but you don't want it to knock you over or take your feet away or drown you. So the quicker they start to do things, the better. I 100% agree. Now, in this day and age, some of the things that people are really focused on, especially now, is cash flow, costs, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. So no investments. They want everything to be faster and better. Now, one of the issues that that PayCargo states is that you save money.
Absolutely. If you just think about the example from the airline side, so from an airline or a ground handler's perspective, if they're a vendor in our system, they don't pay anything to use the system. It's absolutely free. And even when we talk about integrations, we don't charge a single cent to our partners, be it on the airline or the forwarder side, the payer or the vendor side. We cover those costs on our side. If there's something they need to do on their side, obviously they need to take care of that. And sometimes we even work with them to see how do we manage that and help them with that. But it's critical. Once again, our mindset is how do we transform this industry and move this industry forward. So it's a broader role. That's why we do this. And then if you look, so from the airline's perspective, it's free of charge. And now they're getting their money guaranteed overnight via ACH in their account. Number two. Number three, if they used to receive a lot of credit card payments, all those merchant fees they're paying are gone because that is now carried by PayCargo, who becomes the merchant in our model. From a forwarder's perspective, the forwarder, obviously, as I mentioned to you, the cost of that $7.50 per transaction, when you compare it to what those paper processors costed, it's a huge saving. Plus, you've got all these extra controls for free now on how to manage the data flows in your company. You've got for audit trails, you've got immediate access to information. It's a huge benefit for all these stakeholders. So I've had a lot of people challenging me and say, oh, well, forwarders won't go for this model, or, airlines won't do this. And I say to them, guys, we got 19,000 plus payers in our system. We would not have that if there wasn't a value for them. We got over 3,000 vendors in our system. We would not have them in that system if it wasn't that we were adding value. And the system is growing exponentially. Now, one small tidbit that I can give you also that's changed for us with COVID is in the traditional model, as I said, we've got vendors, and those vendors on the air side are airlines and ground handlers. On the ocean side, it's the carriers and the ports. And in the middle, you've got this group of payers who traditionally were your beneficial cargo owners, the freight forwarders, etc. What's happening right now, many of our payers are becoming vendors. So you're getting payers paying payers, you're getting vendors becoming payers, and especially from the payer side, from a forwarder side, if a forwarder starts looking around and saying, okay, I've got a number of people in the industry paying me too. Let's start using PayCargo. Now, all of a sudden, I've got one payment platform. There's a $7.50 cost per transaction on payments I'm making, but I'm getting everything on the inbound side where I'm getting money in for free. So that even reduces the $7.50. So when you talk about the value add in terms of cost savings, it's astronomical.
And also with that amount of payers, etc., the security element is huge. I mean, the money that goes through PayCargo must be well over 10 billion now, is it?
We've processed in 2020 over $4 billion through the system. So it's huge, and it's we, our philosophy is very different. As I said, when I came on board to PayCargo, it was a whole new world for me coming into. PayCargo is not a startup anymore. PayCargo is in that stage where it's transitioning from that startup now to a larger company. Although PayCargo never wants to become a company of thousands of people. We want to do as much as possible with as little as possible.
Exactly.
But the mindset is so different. So it's been an incredible learning opportunity for me, having the ability to work with and learn from some of the key people, like our global CEO Eduardo Del Riego, etc. Because in this sort of startup mindset, everybody gets involved in everything, and it's really about efficiency. So you cannot be territorial. You do not take anything for granted. You challenge everything, and you're continuously looking at how do we evolve to stay ahead of the curve. Because even though we're the payment platform of choice within the industry, no doubt, we don't take that for granted because we know that can change overnight. So it's a really humbling experience working here. And after so many years working in the industry, I realized I didn't know anything from this perspective. And it's a great opportunity to once again grow and advance and add value within the industry to help transform.
But that's lovely, isn't it? If you like you said earlier about loving your job, and like they say if you absolutely love what you do, you never work another day in your life. It's something that you just enjoy, and if you're learning on that journey, it makes every single thing that you see that much brighter, that much more interesting. It's a wonderful thing, and that's why it's so important for people to know a little bit more about their business, their company, and the why, not just being told what to do, where to do it, when to do it, and how to do it, but understanding why, what their actual input makes and the difference it makes. That's so important, and that's what makes people then do things differently. And this wonderful startup world or startup culture, anybody who gets the chance to be involved in any of it, and please God on the more successful ones, but it's such a wonderful, wonderful journey. It's such a great learning chapter in people's lives. It's brilliant.
Absolutely, and for me, it's incredible. So the other difference here is when we're hiring people, because of that culture that I said, we extremely rigid about who we want working here. We need and we really need people who are driven, who are passionate about what they're doing, who are passionate about changing the industry, who know the industry. Because when you join a startup, you're running at 110% from day one. Yes, it's long hours, it's hard work, but invariably the people who are doing this love what they are doing, and that's why they're here. Yeah. And it's like a magnet, people want to be associated with a winning team, right?
Yes. So
it's really a great thing. Now, the other thing I'd like to add is that, PayCargo is just one of the sort of startup culture within the industry. I've seen a lot of companies coming to the forefront now lately within the logistics industry. And I know we talk a lot about, a lot of paper and a lot of outdated processes. But I must say, I think a lot of companies are stepping up to the plate now, be it airlines, be it freight forwarders, be it service providers. A lot of people are coming to the table and are taking this seriously. And I think it's also because the boards have seen the value that cargo is delivering, and our cargo has been the savior for many companies, right? Yeah. So I want to give kudos to all those people out there. And a lot of them are our partners. We love working with them and we love learning from them, and hopefully they're learning from us. But once again, I think we all need to come together as a community to drive this change, because if we do not, we're going to have little bits and pieces. You can have the payment piece working, but if you do not have the track and trace or et cetera working, then it all doesn't come together, and we don't get the great benefits out of this.
No, I think you're 100% right there. And the sooner people get in their mindset that it's much more enjoyable, and I know you do with the rugby ball behind you there, but it's much more, and this is just my opinion, but it's much more fun winning in a team than on your own, because on your own there's only yourself to reflect on it. When you're with a team, you're able to share it, and every team I've ever played for, the more successful they were, the harder they trained. The harder they trained, the more success they got. But they also had fun, and they had so many people wanting to play or to be part of that team and to fight to get into the first team positions. And that's what it's all about. And if everybody does that, it's going to be so much more beneficial. And this crisis has given everybody the opportunity now to look at how many rocks were in their rucksack and get rid of the legacy of waste, and not necessarily build back better, but bring back better, because it is going to bounce back better. But if you're prepared, you've got a great chance of winning.
Exactly. So my next question then, Chris, is who's going to win on Saturday?
Who's going to win on Saturday, right? I get called a plastic paddy because of all our family are Irish, and then obviously England, and I would have to say England are going to come close, and if they win, then it's going to change things for them. But the way the Welsh are playing at the moment, it's going to be a tough call.
So are you going to throw rocks at me if I tell you I'm cheering with the Welsh on this time around?
No. But they deserve. They've had a rough time. The coach has had a rough time because of who he replaced. But things are coming together for them now, and they got a great winger, great young lad. They got loads of great players. Plus, when you've got a captain who's been capped, I think 140 odd times. I mean, what a specimen of a man that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible, incredible.
So this is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to. So as I said to you, I'm in the office. I travel every single week between Raleigh and Miami, coming to the office. So I'm one of those people. I truly believe that our airlines have done an incredible job of making it safe for us to travel. The airports are safe, out of my experience. I haven't seen anything crazy yet. But I'm really looking forward to that day when we can start really traveling, getting in front of people. I think it's you can do Zoom meetings and all these things, but it doesn't come close to sitting around a pub having a beer, or just having a chat at a conference face to face. And then more importantly for me, being able to come and watch some rugby with you.
Oh my God, man. Yeah. And it's such a shame, because this year more than any, I was so determined to get over to South Africa for the Lions tour. I've got so much family there, and they already had tickets arranged, and I was going to spend quite a bit of time in Cape Town, and I'm gutted, absolutely gutted.
Well, crossed fingers that we can do that within the next year or so.
Please God, it'd be an absolute pleasure, as it has been having you on the show, and thank you so much. And it's lovely to see somebody who's enjoying what they're doing so much. Good luck to the organisation and the business. I know it's going to be even more successful probably than you all imagine. And I'm sure it will be. So let's keep in touch. Be lovely to see you again, Lionel. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Take care and stay safe, eh?
Yeah, Cheers. Likewise. All the best.